Hello everyone! It's been a while since we did one of these Q&As, with all the stories to tell and Battle for Azeroth Elf for the test out, but I found some time to sit down and browse your questions, since it's simply a lot of fun to do. Let's kick off this Q&A, starting with 2 questions in one. First of all, from Jol Naxwil. Hey Noble, what happened with Hatun and Krokun after the Legion? And the question from Dudley. So what happens to Azeroth when the Titan is full grown? What does it mean for the planet and its inhabitants? What exactly happened to a planet when a Titan spirit wakes up? That's a little bit up in the air. From the Chronicles, it seems like the Titan is formed out of the planet itself, as it describes their awakening as follows. Even more extraordinary than the Naru were the colossal Titans. Their spirits, known as world souls, form deep within the fiery core of a small number of worlds. For ages, these nascent titans slumbered, their energy suffusing the celestial bodies they inhabited. When the Titan finally awoke, they did so as living worlds. Cosmic winds howled across their gigantic forms, bodies shrouded in a cloak of stardust, skin crisscrossed with silvery mountain peaks, and oceans shimmering with latent magic. With eyes that shone like brilliant stars, they observed the fledgling cosmos and became enraptured by its mysteries. That description that can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but to me it seems like the planet itself that becomes their body. However, when we listen to the 1,000 Years of War audio drama, it describes it as:
Now she lived a history that surpassed the existence of the universe. Blink. It was energy, spinning out into the cosmos. Blink. It found warmth near a sun, and a world formed around it to protect it as it grew. Blink. Generations of life lived and died upon it. Blink.
That makes it seem like the essence of a Titan is actually energy, and the world that forms around it is there to protect it while it's growing, sort of like an egg waiting for the Titan to hatch. I personally like that idea a lot more, considering it gives them the opportunity to wake up the spirit of Azeroth to show us the Titan now slumbering inside of its core, without completely destroying the world that we play on. To the question, what about Argus, what happened to Hatun and his people, that is very hard to say. Argus's birth was not exactly what you would call a Titan naturally waking up. Its energy was imprisoned and enslaved by Sargeras and the Legion, tormented and abused for millennia, and then finally set free with the help of the Pantheon. Almost like a C-section, it's removed from Argus with the intention to harness that power and take care of Sargeras, but the Dark Titan has other plans in mind. He used his power to awaken Argus and pitched it against us, so again, I don't think that we can consider this as a natural birth of a Titan. The fate of the planet of Argus, that has not been described. There could be zero effect, considering that Argus was not left alone and used by the Legion. For all we know, the planet might still be a shit as we left it, or perhaps there's currently massive pools of fel coming down, geysers shooting up out of its core, those that are still left behind, Hatuna's people screaming for help. Why did you leave us behind? Come back! We may never know. Next question from Kyriakos Katsunaris. Oh, I hope I didn't butcher that. What about the Infinite Dragonflight, Noble? Tell us their storyline, and if they plan to come out with as an raid enemy or expansion enemy. Or what about coming out with a raid against all the past villains of the world? Is it possible that Infinite Dragonflight will come out and use all those villains in an expansion? The Infinite Dragonflight, probably one of the coolest storylines that they can work with, as they're still a whole lot shrouded in mystery. They were first introduced with the Burning Crusade, but we couldn't find out more about the origin until the Cataclysm. And the lore behind their empowerment and blessing, that has been changed a little bit, but originally it was said that when the Titans empowered Nosdormu to become the aspect of time, they also made sure to show him the moment of his demise. It was a lesson, so that he would never think his power so great and so terrible that he had to answer to no other but himself. It's a great burden to know when and how you're going to die, but also something very humbling for a being that has the power over time. In Warcraft, we have time travel, but we also have alternate realities, as we've seen with Warlords of Draenor, for example, and at some point in time, Nosdormu was tricked by the old gods into trying to subvert his mortality. The one thing that he wasn't supposed to do, he shattered the time waves with his actions and created the Infinite Dragonflight, with him leading it, now going by the name of Moruzand. You might say, well, perhaps it's just an alternate reality, Nosdormu, a timeline that wasn't supposed to be. But then we have our Nosdormu who says,
"At last it has come to pass. The moment of my demise. The loop is closed. my future self will cause no more harm. Still, in time, I will fall to madness. And you, heroes, will vanquish me. The cycle will repeat. So it goes.
So apparently, this was his true moment of demise, that moment that they showed him. So the actions that he took, which shattered the time waste, was not to subvert his ultimate demise, he just subverted in that moment. This then led into the events of the Cataclysm, where Moruzand tries to prevent us from traversing the time waste, trying to stop us from getting the Demon Soul in the past to use it against Deathwing in the present. We took him out, the cycle is complete, and the Hour of Twilight was prevented. The old gods did not break out of their prisons, and did not rule the world once more. On top of that, Nosdormu also lost a whole bunch of his power and now sees the world through mortal eyes. Perhaps that is the reason why we were actually able to stand a chance against Moruzand, if this moment is still supposed to happen. And again, according to Nosdormu, this is the cycle of events, this is the moment of his demise, so it should happen. Perhaps in the future, we're going to see the old gods make use of his weakened state and birth the Infinite Dragonflight. That's uncertain, but it is what we know about the origin, and we see them mainly in the Caverns of Time, but they also showed up in, for example, the novel War Crimes. They try to manipulate certain events, like preventing Thrall from escaping Durnhold, preventing Arthas from going to Northrend, and prevent Medivh from opening up the Dark Portal and kickstart the first Horde invasion of Azeroth. In the novel, Twilight of the Aspects, they make a connection between Thrall not escaping, and thus not being able to offer his aid against the Legion, which then results in the destruction of the world, and a similar reason can be given to stopping Medivh from summoning the Horde to begin with. You could even draw this line further and connect it to the old gods and the events of the Cataclysm. Would we have discovered and been prepared to dealing with Yogg-Saron in Ulduar, was it not for Arthas the Lich King? Would Thrall have been there during the Cataclysm to prevent the Hour of Twilight if the Horde had never come to Azeroth, or if he had never escaped Durnhold? The twists and turns of time, small ripples in the lake, they're very hard to predict. Now with Mr. Pandaria, it seems like they were aiming at the birth of the Infinite Dragonflight in the form of Kairos Dormu. He was present at the Timeless Isle, and he was not happy with the loss of their powers, seeking a way to increase it. We actually helped him with filling up the Hourglass of Time, which they then used to shape a form time as if it were a ball of clay. Manipulate events by taking Garrosh back in time to an alternate reality, having him form the Iron Horde to stand with us against the coming of the Legion. Of course, those events didn't exactly go as planned, since Garrosh murdered Kairos upon arrival, but what he was trying to do, that seemed to be very in line with the Infinite Dragonflight. Would also explain why they showed up to help Garrosh escape an allegiance with Kairos, but the story that was either never meant to be, or it was cut out of Draenor like so many others. To your question, as in will they ever make a raid against past enemies? Like, there's nobody that can give that answer besides Blizzard, but I personally think it could be a very fun side thing to do, very similar to the Brawlers Guild, and something that they have done during BlizzCon. I do wonder though, if we're ever going to see the birth of the Infinite Dragonflight. If Nosdormu is correct about his moment of demise, then you would imagine that at some point he is going to turn into Moruzand. It's pretty certain that the Battle for Azeroth will give a role to the old gods' influences, so perhaps we'll finally see that moment come to be. Only time will tell, I suppose.
Time is a tangled web. Try not to dwell on all the loose ends.
Then a question from Valen. Hey Noble, or anyone who knows the answer. I was wondering where the Illidari Naga stands. I mean, Azshara is serving the old gods, and for a while Illidan was serving Sargeras, yet Lady Vashj was probably the most loyal of our inner circle, so I was wondering if they left Azshara's side and are rebels/traitors to the majority of the Naga. Tricky question, that's for sure. Now in the past I said that most Naga are fiercely loyal to the Queen Azshara, and while that still mostly holds up, we've definitely seen more examples of Naga stepping away from their queen. Their origin, that lies back when, over 10,000 years ago, Azshara and the Highborn tried to summon Sargeras into the world. The War of the Ancients played out, and those plans were prevented. The war ended in catastrophe for her. Azshara's hubris and abuse of power would lead to the destruction of the Well of Eternity. The enormous lake buckled in upon itself, eventually igniting a monstrous explosion that shattered the world's surface. Azshara watched these events unfold from her broken palace. She refused to believe that her dreams of a paradise were dead. That the world that she had once cradled in her palms was coming apart beneath her feet. Many of the Highborn were just as delusional as the Queen, and they remained at her side. As the ocean roared in to fill the void left by the destroyed Well of Eternity, Azshara raised Shattersdal high. She wove a magical shield around herself and the Highborn, saving them from being crushed by the colossal waves, but that was only a momentary reprieve. The howling ocean soon swallowed the Queen, Shattersdal and her followers. Then it sucked them down, and down into darkness. They drifted into the abyss, but Azshara and the Highborn remained unbroken. The darkness around them was absolute, and so the Queen willed Shattersdal to bring them light, and it did. Azshara's and the Highborn's blood ran cold, and so the Queen willed Shattersdal to warm them, and it did. Their lungs burned for air, and so the Queen willed Shattersdal to let them breathe the water, but it did not. The scepter could not save them. Oblivion spread its arms and beckoned the desperate Highborn. As the ocean crushed the life from their bodies, ancient creatures stirred in the darkness. Their whispers flowed through the currents. Their powers wrapped tight around the Queen and her servants. The Highborn became something new. Something more. A fleece of scales shimmered over their skin, tails thrashed against the currents. The unknown entities made the Queen and her followers one with the sea. They made them into the Naga. That's from the description of Shattersdal, while the War of the Ancients trilogy is a little bit more specific about these arc entities, as they are the old gods. They made a deal with Azshara. They would help them, make them more than what they were, and when the time came for what they grant them, they would serve them well. That is how the Naga came to be, and many of them still remain severely loyal to their queen. Now in Warcraft 3, we witness Illidan summoning the aid of the Naga, and for some unexplained reason, they actually answered his call. There was a bit of flirtation between Lady Vash and Illidan within the trilogy, and he is the one that she apologizes to upon her death, and not Queen Azshara. The motivation of serving him, that is not entirely explained as far as I know. It could be that it was simply done in order of Azshara to stand with Illidan and reclaim the rightful place in the world. Or perhaps they have plans of creating a brand new Well of Eternity with the waters taken from the original well. Either way, they do seem very loyal to Illidan, while another Naga, Sartis the Heretic, he decided to worship Neptulon the Tidehunter. So the Naga, not just devoted to Azshara, are definitely a thing. And in Legion, we even see more of them, as they decide to place the loyalty with the Burning Legion. In the case of the Illidari Naga, they were sent over to Mardum to help out the Demon Hunters with their mission of getting their hands on the Sargeras Keystone. After the Demon Hunters returning from their imprisonment, the Naga remained loyal to Illidan, the Illidari and their plans. They were ready to see it all through to the end. Say that Azshara does show up again, not taking into account that the events of the Order Hall, they might not even play a role in the next expansion. I still think that they would remain loyal to the Illidari. Naga have shown in the past that they do not blindly follow Azshara or the old gods. They can decide for themselves who they want to follow, and they've now been with the Illidari for such a long time. I'd imagine that that actually means something, and that their loyalty is solid. That's just my take on it though. If Blizzard decides that the Naga are going to return to Azshara's side, that is of course an option as well. And then our last question for today, that comes from Nether. Hey Nobo, I was wondering, what are your overall thoughts of Legion as an expansion? How ranks it to you, and what you thought the story and how the lore played out? Were you planning on making a video about this? Now that Legion is pretty much over for the most part. The idea of making a video on this where I review Legion, that has definitely crossed my mind a couple of times, but it's very difficult to rate an MMORPG as it goes on, since the content is released over time and you can't really say how it turns out until you reach the end, and even then the content drought between expansions, that is definitely something to consider. All the same, in my opinion, Legion is one of the best, if not the best expansion that they have done so far. Yet of course, it's not perfect. One of the bigger issues that I found was the artifact system and its effect on playing alts or even off-specs. The concept of earning artifact power with pretty much whatever you want to do in-game, that's a great one, since it's motivation to keep on playing the game. Yet at the same time, especially at the start, it gave the feeling of I have to stick with this spec so that I get enough artifact power, so I don't have time to play other characters if I want to get most out of my weapon. You could argue that this was only true for the very top percentage of the players, as for them it really mattered to fill up the artifact quickly, but even me, as a casual, felt the need to hit those levels, to be the best that I could be. Later down in the expansion cycle, they definitely made it easier to fill up those artifacts, but I feel like a system should have been in place which would allow you to send over, like, I don't know, your weekly artifact power earned, 50% of that you can send it over to an alt in exchange for Order Hall resources or gold. Or even have 50% of your earned artifact power just trickle down into your aspects, so you don't feel that you have to confine yourself to one certain spec. A big downside to make it more difficult to play your alts, there was a whole lot of content in Legion, was actually locked behind playing different characters. You had class-specific artifact questlines, order halls, mounts, followers. Not everybody has the luxury and the madness to actually make a video on all of those, and I can definitely understand it when people say like, yeah, I missed out on a lot of the expansion because I didn't have the time to play those classes. Once again, this was solved later down the line, but I feel there should have been a catch-up mechanic in place at the very start. Next to that, the random legendary system is one that I think sounded really good on paper, but it did not work out in practice. Increase your chance at earning a legendary by simply playing the game. Give people a reason to do stuff, and in exchange, you might get a legendary. On paper, it's a reason to play the game, which is not a bad thing, but in practice, you have to wonder exactly who you're making happy with this system. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've seen a message pop up that a player in my guild got a legendary, and the guild goes, yeah, congrats man, well done, and the person said, it's not the one I wanted. Yeah, you're right, that is a pretty shit legendary to get. Now that's the feeling you create, right? There are certain legendaries that you want to have early on, since they're simply better than the other ones. And when it's so random and out of your control which one you're going to get, you'll either end up with disappointment, you'll end up with the feeling of why even bother, or just not care at all. Right now, we have a system that allows you guaranteed access to a legendary, and again, I feel like that should have been there at the start. It's still random on what legendary you're going to get, but at the same time, it's still something solid to work towards, something to farm, so that those crazy enough to do so, they can get the legendaries quickly, and those that don't really care, they can get them over time. I much rather have something more solid to work towards. Like, okay, if I do dungeon runs for 4 weeks, I'll have these amounts of shards and I'll have one extra legendary. That would be a lot more fun in my opinion than a random chance wherever I might go. And the final major thing to bitch about, that would be time gating content, as time gating is a very thin line to walk upon, a very thin line to either do it right or do it wrong. The Sudamar campaign, that was in my opinion an excellent example of time gating done right. The content was enough for a weekly basis, and it made sense that over time we worked on helping out the Nightborn. We sieged their city and we made our way into the raid. It felt natural to me, and during the Let's Play with Fury, we actually realized that when you do it all in one single go, the entire campaign is actually quite massive. Now an example on how not to do it, that would be the Broker Shore. That area already didn't have that much content to begin with, and to decide to cut up that little piece that you had, you ended up with silly quest of go kill demons for me this week, and the next week just, you know, do it again, collect the certain amount of coins, oh haha, I only need one. The quest felt very, very empty. I understand that sometimes there just isn't that much outdoor content to go with, but to then lock it behind a weekly release, yeah, not the best moment in Legion. But even with all those things in mind, like I said, the expansion wasn't perfect, but I've never seen an expansion that was. All in all, Legion has been an amazing experience for me. The amount of content, especially since I took on a job of showing all of it, that meant that I had to level up all the classes in the zones, and the zones actually offer a really solid questing experience. I very much enjoyed the Order Hall campaign, and the Artifact quest, and the Follower quest, and the Mount quest, despite definitely seeing a difference in quality between them. It was a lot of fun to go through. The Brawlers Guild did not just get a number tune-up this time around, we actually got new bosses. The Maid's Tower still to this day offers a challenge for people that are looking for it, with very nice rewards. Voice acting, despite sometimes not being the greatest, it definitely helps with bringing the story to life, and the cinematics just blew me away. The group finder from Warlords, in combination with flex rating and the difficulty on normal, now actually allowing pucks to succeed, that has definitely increased the fun with picking up people from the stream and just go into raids and see how far you can go. I've even joined my guild again on a lot more raids, and I have found that on Taurus, for example, the higher difficulty you go, the more fun and interesting the fights actually become. The Secret Discord has come together to solve several mysteries placed within the game. Mysteries not spoiled by data mining, and some of the hidden skins for the artifacts, like the Paladin one for example, that was just a work of love. The Caligos questline, that could have easily been one for Legendary, but instead they decided to reward us with a skin, a questline that I really enjoyed to do. And the best thing added to the game in a very long time, maybe forever, that would have to be Mythic Plus. Not only does it offer a different path into gearing, not only does it keep dungeons relevant, it also offers a challenge, and it's just a lot of fun to do. I think a big reason why I actually enjoy raiding with my guildies again is because I can keep up with their item level, I can somewhat keep up with the DPS when I just keep up with my Mythic Plus. That way I don't really fall behind, it's content in a much smaller group, and like I said, it's just great fun to go through. World quests are a step up from the static daily quests that we knew, and even the mission boards, despite some screaming bloody murder when they saw it, you know, it was alright, mainly because it wasn't part of the core gameplay, which is, in my opinion, why the one in Draenor fell so flat on its face. Story-wise, the amount is kinda insane when you consider all the backstories for the classes and the artifacts. Absolutely insane how much they've added. Delivery, as I mentioned, is outstanding. Voice acting, cinematics, cohesive storyline, start to finish, with even a drop off into the next expansion. Now the story itself, how to rate that one? Now, it's not a Wrath of the Lich King, right? But it sure as hell is not a Warlords of Draenor. I'd say it's an alright, leading towards a good, with a side of it could have definitely been worse. I'm very, very happy that they didn't use the prophecy as they described it in the Illidan novel, and they actually went with the complete opposite. They still tried to make Illidan seem better than he actually was, but when he was on stage, he was definitely an Illidan all the way till the end. The different zones, they offered cool storylines related to the dungeons and raids, and the Emerald Nightmare that even offered whispers that we still speculate about to this very day. The Horde Alliance conflict, I feel like that has been a little bit underdeveloped in Legion, and the effects of that ripple on into Battle for Azeroth, but all in all, the storyline in Legion, to me it felt adequate and leading towards good. I think one major point of critique for the story, that would have to be the weakness of the Legion and the small moments with Sargeras. Like the entire expansion, it started off really cool, right? And it even goes back to BlizzCon, where like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a Legion invasion unlike you've ever seen before. You are gonna feel the pain, they're gonna bring in ships, it's gonna be incredible. And at the start, that's actually what they delivered. Both the Alliance and Horde had to deal with massive losses, and the Legion was giving it their all. An invasion like we'd never seen before, with even older zones feeling their threats. But the moment that we went out to get our artifacts, and we teleported Dalaran to the Broken Shore, that's basically the moment where they just started lining up and got their asses kicked. Besides Ysera dropping in Val'sharah because of Xavius, there wasn't really a moment where you felt like, yeah, this is really difficult. This is definitely a hard-earned victory. Quite the opposite, actually. Oh, we're on the Broken Shore. Let's just cruise through the Tomb of Sargeras real quick. Oh, hello, Argus. Freaking home base of the Legion. Ready to bow down to the might of Azeroth. That's what it felt like to me. And I feel like there should have been more of a threat. More danger and more loss while taking on Space Satan. And those final moments with Sargeras, they pretty much came out of the blue. All in all though, yeah, I simply enjoyed the crap out of Legion. I still enjoy it to this day. And yeah, in my opinion, one of the best, if not the best expansion that they have ever made. By all means though, let me know what you think about the expansion. How would you rate it? Leave it in the comments down below. And if you have any questions that you'd like to see featured in a future video, that would also be the place to leave them. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos. Leave a like if you enjoyed this one. And until next time, guys. See ya!